Okay. All right. Um, I'm hopefully gonna do this quickly and not that long. Um, I don't want this to be that long because my kids are gonna get up and I gotta go and I gotta do other things today. But I'm reading this book right now. I just started it. Who knows how far I'll get into it. So Owen Barfield and the Case for Anthroposophy. Um, oh man, it's phenomenal. So it's well, Owen Barfield is really good, but what I was realizing reading it this morning, because I started because I don't have my new book club, and I was just like, whatever, I'll just read one of these books that I have. Is that what up, Emily? So what this makes me think of is Alan Moore on magic. Curious, what up? And I don't know, I was just like on fire this morning thinking about stuff. This reminded me of like early days of randos where I would just send people like 20 minutes of recorded audios and just all these random thoughts that I'm thinking. Because this is like, these streams are like what I used to just send people in like just private audio chats, voice memos and things. It's just my mental processing. But as I'm reading this book, okay, Owen Barfield is notoriously well known as being not a good writer. So the other person in the corner who's gone deeply into Barfield, and a lot of people talk about Barfield, but like Michael Lady, I sent all this stuff to Michael too. He's gone deep down these wells because very early on in the little corner, one of the first things I ever mentioned to Paul, I think it was in our first combo or before our first combo, and I said, Owen Barfield, Saving the Appearances. This is the book that's all this is about. Like everything with the meaning crisis, intimacy crisis, everybody's going to have their own personal stories, but intellectually, what's going on behind all this and consciousness, it's Saving the Appearances. This book is what it's about. And okay, I'm going to get back to this. I'll come back. Why does it remind me of Alan Moore? Let's go there because this is the main point I want to make. I was reading this book and it makes me think of a couple things. It's related to this, that it's incredibly hard to understand, difficult to understand. So here's the thing. He's writing in English. This is English. And I read the first 4 or 5 pages in audios that I sent to my friends. And I'm like, this is what illustrates, there's many things to illustrate of like the nested nature of reality. And this is tied to Little Big, that book that I was reading, and the Infundibulum and Russian nesting dolls, and how I think reality exists as these nested fields with nested relationships. And the big picture for me is Christ, the only existent one, which is this line that we say in Holy Week of Lent coming up. I can't remember which service it is, but one of the services in the liturgy, we say Christ, the only existent one. All of reality and everything that exists is Christ, is the church, is whatever. And within that, there's all these different inner rings of existence where John Crowley in Little Big describes them as there are circles of existence within your current sphere of existence that there are many doors that you can enter into. And then when you enter into them, they open up and they're wide, which is very similar. I was saying it's related to C.S. Lewis talks about this, the great battle, the end of his book, the shack that the monkey and the lion, who are also charlatans, build and make up. That shack you enter into, and it's basically like the new heavens, the new earth. It's like heaven, and Emeth enters into it with them, the worshiper of Tash, right? And no true worshiper of Tash can actually be worshiping Tash, that whole thing that people don't like that Lewis says. But they go into this shack that's built by charlatans, and it opens up into this world of the further up and the further in, of infinite breadth and depth in this tiny shack in Narnia, which is a world within a world, right? Because you go in the wardrobe and it's a world within a world. And then in that, there's a world within a world. So Owen Barfield, Alan Moore, magic. Let's get back to that. This is part of what I want to say. This is part of the mosaic. That Alan Moore quote, which I think I put the video in the description here, and I tried to link to the, I don't think it worked, to the quote, but you can find it. It's at some website. I don't know. You can Google it and figure it out if you're most interested. If you're interested enough. But spells, magic, all language is magic, all art is magic, all culture arises from cult. This is the folk process that Tom Waits talks about that I've referenced before. The reason, to the degree that you can understand me, and this is also a big push for personalist knowing, it's because you are familiar with me. It's because you know me. It's because you're knowing as you are known. Our relationship, the more that you know me, the more you can understand me. Part of that has to do with all these nested fields of relationship. It's English speaking, understanding my culture, understanding my family, understanding all the different fields and the multiplicities in the relationships, the relatio that make up me. The more that you understand that, the more that you can understand me. This is written in English. Most people will not understand this. We all know this from, so like other people can be speaking Chinese. I don't understand them. This is English and I barely understand it. And I understand it to varying degrees. And like, this is why good fiction is infinitely deep, because there's so much in it for you to understand. That as you grow and mature as a person, you understand more and you can understand more and you can understand more and different things. Like, what I want to say is like, this is true. What he's saying in this book is true. Most people won't be able to understand it or comprehend it because I don't know why, just because. And this is why I read a lot of it in the voice memos that I sent to my friends, is because like he's saying clear things. He's laying out things, but like it's incomprehensible to some degree. This is also the criticism that people have of like Vervaeke or symbolism or this little corner of the internet. Everything works this way. It's like when someone like T-Grog or other people come into this little corner of the internet and they'll watch one of my live streams, one of Paul's live streams, and they'll be like, what are these people saying? This is nonsense. This makes no sense to people. Well, it doesn't if you're not within that relationship. If you haven't been initiated and you haven't been put under that spell of that language and that magic, you won't be able to understand it. Being under the spell of that language is part of understanding it. Science is like this too, people. It's not complicated. Most people don't understand advanced astrophysics or chemistry or quantum mechanics or whatever. You can say all those words in English, and they are English words rooted in Latin and all that, but like you won't understand it if you're not initiated in it, if you're not under its spell. That's how it works. And spells, just like hierarchies, bind and blind. This is where like T-Grog's criticisms will, and this is where negative cults happen, is like you can get under the spell of a cult, which is necessary. It's inevitable. You have to understand anything. And then you can flip that and it can become a closed system, cultish thing that binds and blinds anything else, that doesn't let anything else in, and become a dead, stagnant pond or a dead castle where there's no spring coming up to give it life, and it's not getting anything from outside. It's just a dead thing. Everything works that way. And it reminds me of the George MacDonald quote from Lilith, is where we conflate familiarity with understanding. And where he says, and the fact is no man understands anything. And he says, I'm sorry I can't explain the thing to you. I but barely apprehend it myself. And the fact is there's nothing in you for understanding it. You only think you understand it because you have unavoidable relations with things. And so you have familiarity with it. But familiarity isn't understanding. Like people think they understand this table that my computer's sitting on, this phone. You think you understand this because you're familiar with it. You don't understand this. Like, explain to me what matter is. You can't. You won't be able to. You'll just keep saying words, spells, definitions, and you'll talk about like I first realized this with Indy Wilson, Notes from the Tilt-A-Whirl, and there's a great video where you can find it. Like type into YouTube Indy Wilson talking rocks, and he'll walk through this with you where he says, he's filling up gas with his pickup, and there's some illustrations and stuff. It's helpful. And he's like, this pickup is made of metal. Well, what's metal? Well, you can say it's made up of these elements, and they're elements, and there's protons and neutrons, electrons, and then you go into the nucleus and you get into subatomic particles and up quarks, down quarks, leptons, bosons, all these different subatomic. What are those? You don't know. You don't know. They're just names. What's the Bohr model of the atom? Is that what an atom is? No. What is an electron? What's a wave and a particle? Is it either of those? Yes and no. Like, you don't know what anything is. You just think you do. And this book, I don't know. I just had a greater realization of that reading this book, because he's explaining things very simply. Like, but in a sense it's not, because we are so under the spell. This is what I would say. And it's a very T-Grog thing. T-Grog, if you watch this, you are so under the spell, and most of us are, in the modern world, because it's just the way it is, that you cannot understand what he's talking about, because we are bewitched by philosophical materialism. And we can't, even though he's logically laying things out, things that are true, you can't see it because you're under a spell. And I don't know. Part of me wants to read a lot of this, but then this would get really long, and I don't have time, and I think I'm just going to leave it there. I don't know. I may have like Chad or somebody who's more tech savvy help me to figure out how to just like rip the audio from my voice recordings and put that up as like an addendum video or something. He doesn't have my goat, Stephen. He's a very helpful illustration. I think he's great. I like that he's around, because this is, if you receive everything as a gift, if all good things come down from the Father of heavenly lights, who doesn't change like shifting shadows, and all of life is grace, all of life is a gift, including your suffering, including your undergoing, your transformation, your becoming a butterfly, T-Grog's a blessing. Of course he's a blessing. I don't agree with him, but this is the thing. I don't need to exercise the demon of people who disagree with me in order to justify my own self-identity and security. Like, I don't need that. That's the hyper-conservative impulse that I think is wrong, is to get rid of those with whom you disagree to justify your own fear and insecurity, because you don't actually have faith in what you should have faith in. So he doesn't have my goat. He's just a useful illustration. At least I don't think so. All right. I'm going to put out a link. If anybody wants to come in and play for just a little bit, if people are out there, that would be cool. I'm going to cut this off in like 15, 20 minutes. I'm going to go look at some things here, some comments. Emily, you're curious is here. Jonathan Demir, what up, my boy? Nested relationships. All right. Okay. Yeah. Antinatalism is completely unrelated. I could maybe do a separate video on that. And most are condemned to hell. Then why would Christians ever give birth? Well, the path is narrow. Most are condemned to hell. Yeah. But again, there's so many assumptions about hell. When people say a comment like this, you have a certain understanding of hell. I posted a video, or a link to my video, in like a community post on my channel yesterday, I think. And it was like all these people from Love Unrelenting talking about their opposition to annihilationism or conditional immortality. But again, even that conversation, people won't understand, because you're under the spell of this one understanding of hell, which is the Far Side comic, which is the traditionalist view in the West, post-Augustine, of eternal conscious torment, or infernalism being the only and exclusive understanding of hell, where like you get into hell and you never get out. And it's assumptions of the unending qualitative experience of time, which all these things are assumptions. It's very related to this. It's just not philosophical materialism. It's just you're under that spell of hell and you can't see outside of it. But there's 3 different understandings of hell with tons of different nested subcategories underneath those 3. And those are apokatastasis, universal reconciliation, universalism, annihilationism or conditional immortality, and then the traditional view in the West. There hasn't been a traditional view in the East of eternal conscious torment or infernalism. So I do think the way is narrow, and few are that find it. But there is exclusion, but I don't believe in unending, infinite time exclusion. I believe in exclusion for inclusion, and that's a complicated conversation, completely different conversation. But yeah, To steelman your point though, like if you have a certain belief in hell, if you think there is a certain kind of hell and most get there, yeah, you would be an antinatalist. And there are people who've done that, who just like there are people who've murdered their children before they reach the age of accountability to ensure their salvation. Like that's fucked up. So I'll steelman you there. What else? Tom, yeah. Dude, amen. But here's the thing is like this is why you have to have understandings and magic. This is why the Bible's so profound, why parables are so profound. What up, Jonathan? Because these things don't
So,
scale.
you
Owen
hold up.
Barfield doesn't scale. How many people, what percentage of the world is ever going to understand Owen Barfield? Less than 1%. I think very few in this corner understand Owen Barfield. I barely understand him. And it isn't to say like I'm great, but like I'm interested. I'm the one who first brought him up in the corner. I've read him a fair amount. I think he's hugely important, and I barely understand him. It's just, that's not the way to salvation. But I'm still going to talk about it. What up, Jonathan?
Not much. How's it going, man?
Oh man, I get fired up. I'm in like a morning manic phase. The morning is my time, man. I just wake
Hey,
up
well,
and
this
I'm
is
just like,
it's good stuff to get fired up about, in my opinion. I think it makes sense.
yeah, I haven't the case for this is free online apparently. This book? That'd be cool.
Yeah, I didn't hear you mention Anthroposophy much. I was curious to hear your thoughts on that.
So both Steiner, I didn't even realize, I mean, I've had this book, but I haven't delved into it. I didn't even know that Owen Barfield was such an advocate of it.
Yeah.
I got into Owen Barfield. I mean, Lewis has been my path through all these things. I got into McDonald through Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
I got into Owen Barfield through Lewis because I like Lewis so much because of his Ransom trilogy predominantly and a lot of his other works. I've read a lot of Lewis. And then I just realized, like in reading Barfield, what I came to realize, so he got me into McDonald first, and McDonald just blew my mind. Like I read Lilith and it changed my life. And his
I didn't realize that Lilith was by McDonald until like yesterday. I heard one of you mentioned it.
Yeah.
One of you mentioned it in the stream. I was like, oh wow, that's cool. I didn't know he
Dude,
wrote
it's
that.
so it changed my life. But even Lilith, like Lilith is a book that most people Little Big, that book that I just read that I've been talking about, most people would read it. There was a couple guys from my book club who got like a quarter of the way through it because I think it was just nonsense to them. They're like, this book is crazy. Like, what is happening? And I'm just like, it's so
What
good.
you were saying there about like the spells of different,
Yes.
I was thinking about posting a video the other day about like the different corners. I recorded something while I was driving around. I was like, what are the other corners? This little corner, that little corner, and like we all have our language, that's unique to our corner, and it's like a magic spell. I thought that was really interesting. It reminded me actually of a C.S. Lewis quote while you were saying that, which was that he says, "Remember your fairy tales, children. Spells are used for not." He didn't say children, but he said,
Yeah.
"Remember your fairy tales. Spells are used for breaking enchantments as well as for inducing them." It's like
Totally. That's
I like how
exactly what I'm
I like
talking
how
about.
there's so much all magic is bad. So I really
Oh
support
man.
this stream where it's like, no, we're all doing magic all the time, and
Yes.
it's just you have to have good magic.
Yeah. This is something that's really my boy Jason has been talking about this all the time, and he's been talking to like tarot card readers and witches, and I think he has some like one of his great aunts or grandma or something was kind of a witch.
Yeah,
And
I like tarot cards, but I wouldn't self-identify as a witch.
yeah, I
Or
don't.
a wizard, maybe a little bit, but
Well, I think tarot cards are interesting, but like this is the thing, is like we're all, if everything is really magic, like we're all doing magic. We're all wizards. Like why do people read, all these conservative Christians, like they'll read Tolkien and like what do you think Gandalf is?
yeah.
You know,
Well,
like
this is why
good elves.
this is one of my things that I've been raving about. Is like if we're like I think the big problem is that if we're using this magic all the time, like language, we're doing it unconsciously, and like we don't realize that it's magic. We don't realize the metaphysical power that we're invoking in speaking or acting and stuff. And I think just to be aware that it's like, people talk about like manifestations or visualizations where you like like the story you tell yourself in your mind, it's the same thing. It's a magical spell that you're casting in your mind, and it's like if you realize that it's magic, and that like it will have an effect on the reality that you inhabit, like you maybe change the story you're telling yourself, type of thing. It's kind of, see what I'm getting at?
Oh yeah, for sure, man. And this is the whole half of the. I mean, he really goes into it. I don't know. I want to try to figure out a way to rip my audios and put the video out there where I just read part of it, or something, because it's valuable, because he really lays it out, and he basically lays out. I heard one of my kids, so I'm gonna have to go pretty quick. But he lays out like how modern science wanted to exclude the mind. Like that was the whole point of objectivism, is to get rid of the mind, and so then you could really make sense of these. All the sense evidence, right? But what you don't realize is like all of the what science is doing. Like, how does he say it in here? Because I said it in one of my audios, and if I could find the place. So Marjorie, he quotes this Marjorie Green from her book, The Knower and the Known, and he says that. So here, this sentence, I'll just read this. Whether we go to neurology or to physics or elsewhere, we are confronted with the demonstrable conclusion that the actual macroscopic world of nature, as distinct from the microscopic, submicroscopic, and inferred world of physical science, is mediated by concepts as well as presented through the senses. So like, and earlier he says that we, this revolution that's happened of like scientific materialism is, he says, to experience a world of corporeal substance as existing quite apart from his thinking self is a, quote, law of his nature and is not a conclusion of his judgment. Like, this is what I keep trying to say to T-Grog. Nate, what's up? You just let yourself in.
Dude, that was like putting out the bats. I should be wearing my Batman shirt, because like that was basically putting out the bats.
Yeah, same. I felt the same way. I was like, oh, I have to go to this.
Oh man.
Oh.
So, hey, I'm gonna be off here in just a second, but I'm live streaming, so don't come in the video.
It's nice to meet you, Nate.
Yeah,
Been
nice to meet you
big fan for a while.
So
yeah.
what's so crazy about this? And Nate, just keep carrying it on, whatever, if you want to.
He was just if in case you missed the quote that Luke was reading, he was reading about, if I get this right, it's basically, it's another way of phrasing how like the concepts that we carry are like glasses in a sense, like they change the, like you can't say like, the mind is never gone, in the sense where like, your mental framework is never, there's no objective view,
Yeah,
that's kind of what you're getting at.
You're assuming the concepts or the laws or all these things are these inferred realities that are the unity of all of the the evidence from your sense perception, the unity of that brings forth the narrative that allows it to have any utility and function in the world. You're just assuming. That's your faith.
Right.
And he's laying this out just like incredibly clearly, but like that's the case for anything.
I actually, I didn't hear any of the text that you read, but I would say this. It's interesting. I was just at the Symbolic World Summit, and Pajot in his opening talk was talking about person in a way that was really starting to get close to like the sense of like why I would say Anthroposophy has a point, and I would say it has to do with like the inevitable connection between the human being and the whole. Like there is no there like the we are a part of what is giving the entire thing life and consciousness. Inseparably so. Like there's no without persons to perceive the cosmos has no meaning.
Exactly. So I want to read an excerpt from the book because I just can't help myself now, and then I'm going to really try to make myself go. But
yeah, I have to go as well, pretty shortly. So
okay, but T-Grog is here, and like this is precisely what I'm talking about. Is like he can't. Like T-Grog, love you, buddy, and this is where I'll challenge you. Like I'm not going to exclude you, but I will challenge you because that's what I believe healthy communities do. Is you're a fish that doesn't know you're wet, and he's explaining why and you won't be able to see it. You won't, because you're in a closed circle of the serpent. But I want to read this part. So
You never know, though. He might hear you.
I don't know.
He
He
won't
might
without
have an
death.
Here's the thing.
experience.
He won't
have an
without death and
experience that allows
resurrection.
him.
It depends on what part of him you're talking about.
Yeah,
Luke?
exactly. So this part, it's an illustration of the differences between well, you'll get it. Okay. When two mutually
What
dependent.
book are you reading from, by the way? Okay, Barfield's Case for Anthroposophy. Okay.
So when two mutually dependent human relatives are separated so that for the first time one of them can, quote, go it alone, there may be drawbacks, but it is the advantages that are most immediately evident. By freeing itself from the taint of, quote, occult qualities, that is, by meticulously disentangling itself from all reference, explicit or implicit, to non-material factors, the material world as a field of knowledge gained inestimable advantages. We perhaps take them for granted now, but the men of the 17th century, the members of the Royal Society, for instance, had a prophetic inkling of what the new liberty promised. You have only to read some of their pronouncements. For them, it was an emotional as well as an intellectual experience. Quote, bliss was it in that dawn to be alive. End quote. But when two people separate so that one of them can go it alone, it follows as a natural consequence that the other can go it alone. Other can also go it alone. It might have been expected then that by meticulously disentangling itself from all reference, explicit or implicit, to material factors, the immaterial as a field of knowledge would also gain inestimable advantages. That is what did not happen, but it will be well to state at once that it was nevertheless precisely this correlative epistemological principle that is the basis of Rudolf Steiner's Anthroposophy. It belongs to the post-Aristotelian age for the same reason that natural science does, but in the opposite way. So it's just like the Tao, essentially, to natural science. Thus, the parallel terms, quote, spiritual science and, quote, occult science, which he also used, do not betoken a fond belief that the methodology of technological science can be applied to the immaterial. The methodology of technological science is rightly based on the exclusion of all occult qualities from its thinking. The methodology of spiritual science is based on an equally rigorous exclusion of all physical qualities from its thinking. In quotes, physical qualities. That is one of the things I hope this book will make clear.
That was unclear to me, for sure. It seemed to me that Steiner thought about spiritual science as encapsulating both material and non-material sciences. That's interesting.
Okay. Yeah, the difference between Hermes and school spirit. Hermes is actually like an archetype that is associated with one of the 7 planetary bodies.
He's much more eternal, he's got
it
got
is not
time behind
exactly
him.
Yeah, and will always be with us, and school spirit is something that's far more ephemeral.
It's an older spirit.
Yeah, that's interesting. It reminds me, I think this is a big thing about I remember one time you talked about like postmodernism, and you were how like postmodernism, I think about it similarly to like this prodigal journey of science, where we kind of go into science to see what's there and then we come back. It's like the postmodernism, I don't think that any trends are like accidents, where it's like all the kind of like what you're talking about with Gutenberg 2.0, it's like this whole process is part of the story, even though there's like suffering involved and alienation, estrangement, lack of participation, or whatever you'd say. It's like eventually it comes back, right? And so I think about like the postmodernism thing is like this is just a natural response to like objectivity, right? Where we have like the subjective aspect matters, right? It's like the frames that we wear, the glasses that we see through, et cetera, et cetera. And it's interesting to me in that respect, because I feel like a lot of people can't see the truth in that, and it's interesting for me when it comes to like beauty and stuff like that, because like objective beauty, subjective beauty, like this gets a very touchy area, you know? Like
Yeah.
we talk about like the objectively beautiful and as one of the transcendentals, and I can like, you know, something about that's right, but there's also something about it where it's like there is always like the person's frame that they're
Yes,
looking for. Like you
exactly.
can't control what you love, like you said recently.
Totally. I'm much more on board with what you're just saying, and I think this is true. It's the hard problem of all perception that I talk about, and that, you know, if a tree falls in the forest or whatever, you can't, the phrase that we have, people think this is just poetic nonsense. It's not. It's like the most logical, philosophical shit you could say. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
It really is. So is truth. Everything is in the eye of the beholder. Here, Nate, can I say?
And everybody, we can sense like, oh, it's
totally.
nervous, yeah.
So T-Grog, again, I want to challenge you, dude. I mean, feel free to come on if Nate can stay or whatever. You need to have a long-form conversation with people besides just throwing stones from the peanut gallery here. But anybody that agrees with me is an expert. If it feels good, it must be true. How can that not be just turned around and applied to you? You have your own experts. This is expert witness fallacy, by the way, that you want to believe for various reasons. To quote Philip K. Dick, like he said, reality is that which even when you stop believing in it doesn't go away. There's one reality. This is where you and I would probably agree. You just want to appeal to your witnesses and your experts, and I want to appeal to mine, and we both have faith in our own.
Can I just say something really about you really quick, Luke? Because like sure. I think a lot of people that know you from these live streams and your participation in this little corner, they just think that like you're just some kind of like random chaos monkey. But actually, Luke is actually highly rational and a deeply rigorous thinker, and his background is in the sciences. He's just past all that bullshit.
Chemistry, right?
He's gone beyond it. He took that as far as he could take it and realized where it led and has opened up to something else. And so just don't think because he sounds like this that he can't think, because he definitely can.
It's you know, it reminds me of your idea of iconic language. It's like it's not about the particular words. It's like if you tune into the frequency of Luke, you start hearing what he's saying, and it's like, yes.
Because we're all doing spells.
Even if the
you come under my spell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like even if the sentences are just words and like seemingly unrelated words, like the mosaic, it's there, guys. Like
this is like, did you guys? So I put in one of my videos, and it's good, when Lex Fridman interviewed Tucker Carlson after like he went and interviewed Putin or whatever. Mm-hmm. But at the very beginning of it, and this is worth the time if you do nothing else. But he said at the very beginning of it, he had like an intro where he basically said, one of the points that I thought was most good is he said at the end that people who want to exclude and like not platform people that they don't like, he said, very rarely does it have to do with, oh man, how do you say it? I need to go back and find it. Very rarely does it have to do with an honest search for truth. It's just there are certain people that you despised and you are completely unopen to seeing it differently, and you just don't want to give them a platform. And I was just like, God, Lex, he's a stud for that. And I am a big fan. And very often that's the case. It's just like, these experts are idiots. I hate them. This is the hyper-conservative impulse I'm talking about. It's the disgust factor. You want to kick out all the people that disgust you and the experts that disgust you and not have an open conversation.
It's also judgment. You know, like you're talking about the judgment.
I want to go back and answer the follow-up question that Phoebus had about whether Hermes is a person.
Okay.
And I would say that the archetypes are all in hypostasized in us. They also are in the cosmos. They also exist cosmically throughout all time, but they're also they also are in hypostasized in us. And I think, to me, like that's like part of what the meaning of Christ is the proper ordering of the gods that are within you, as well as the gods that are in the cosmos, because we mirror the cosmos anyway. We already mirror the whole.
Astrology.
Can I just?
Yeah, get in here.
I want to say thank you for letting me in first of all, and I think I've been in streams with maybe all of you except for maybe Jonathan before, but anyway, it's nice to meet you this way.
Nice to meet you, man.
I was curious because the way you just related it, Nate, makes it sound like, okay, you're reflecting the cosmos. So then, like the reason I came in is because I was very triggered by the comment, and I know you kind of said it in such a way as to trigger, which beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and so is truth. But to say that the human being reflects the cosmos implies that it's not just in the eye of the beholder; it's also in the cosmos in that sense. So I'm just curious if you clarify that. Yeah.
Ooh, so this is the person versus the individual. Like,
well, it's mosaic. Actually, that is what he said there. He's pushing right at you in the right direction, because it's only when you're seeing the wholeness. It's only when you're seeing the wholeness of the image that you have that mosaic vision that you're always talking about. If you're focusing on the parts, there's something about, like, you're missing the good, the true, and the beautiful, because you're focusing on just a portion of it, so you're not seeing the entirety.
The beholder, the eye of the beholder isn't the individual. The beholder implies a beholden.
Okay. Fair enough. Because I was just afraid that it was kind of like, okay, what we're just having is sort of a mental orgasm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is the thing. It's right. Like, we don't want to reduce it to, like, I think this is the thing, is that we're struggling to integrate, like, the postmodern impulse, and it's like, what does an integrated of that look like? It's like this idea of where there is this objective quality to the good and the beautiful, but it is also, like, I try and think about, maybe there's some sort of meshing of.
I mean, like, John Vervaeke calls it transjective, right? So, like, that's his way of sort of bridging them, and I do think these. Like, I'm not sure transjective is the solution, but I definitely think that subjective and objective are problematic.
Yeah.
Oh, bye, Luke. See you later.
Oh, no. Yeah. Another thing, it makes me... I have to go as well pretty
soon. I don't know why the balloons keep popping up.
Is it your birthday?
No, I don't know. Not at all.
That's funny.
That's wild.
I guess one more far out idea. I should probably head out as well. I'm going to the St. Patrick's Day parade this morning.
Yeah, I only was in here to.
Well, there'll be a brief stream, because I'm coming back on at 8 a.m. my time. But I saw Luke's title, and I had to come in here.
Yeah,
and
me
see
too.
What was going on.
I felt the same. But so one thing, thinking about, like, observers and stuff, I've been hearing some murmurings through like the physics spheres that, like, black holes might have this ability to, like, collapse quantum states, in the sense where, like, they act as observers in the cosmos to a certain extent, and talking about, like, the sun through Rupert Sheldrake's idea having consciousness, like, this makes me think about what we were just saying in terms of, like, the eye of the beholder, and, like, maybe it's like what beauty is in this galaxy is largely, a reflection of our galactic center, like what it sees as beautiful or something like that. Like, I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing. And then one last, but, it's very speculative, but one last thing. Yesterday I went to a casino for my dad's birthday, and there was a guy who looked just like you, Nate, and they reminded yes, really? Olivia? Yes, I'm doing that. I'm about to leave a live stream. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, I just couldn't help but bring that up, because there was a guy who reminded me just like you. He was like a casino junkie, so very different.
Oh, yeah.
But I was like,
no, it's funny. I used to go to casinos with a friend of mine who had a big beard like me, and he was like this, like, very sharp craps player, and that's actually, he had, like, some property investments and some money from a settlement that he won when he worked for a, like, Bay Area grocery store chain, and that's, like, he supported himself off of that, like, and the gambling. So that's
it was kind of weird going to the casino. I'm not sure how I feel about casinos, but, and it was weird because he was, like, one of the guys running the casino, and he came over and because he saw that we were, like, new or whatever. And he was talking to us, and all I could think about was Nate, but you were not, but, he was definitely not Nate. So I was like, oh, this is a weird dichotomy.
Nah, Nate's actually very pro casino.
Yeah. Oh, yeah?
It's yeah, but casinos are very meaningful to the working classes. It's only the rich people have their casinos too. They're called the stock market.
Yeah. What do you think about like the philosophy
And
of like
of the two, the casinos are less evil than the stock market.
Yeah. I could probably, I would probably agree with that. What do you think about like the like the metaphysical aspect of like what is going on when we gamble metaphysically, like believing in the randomness type of thing, and like because it reminds me of divination, of course. Like when they're pulling the cards, all I can think about is tarot. So like, how do you kind of square that? I'm just
Well,
curious.
I mean, to me, the games are different, right? So it's like there's the games that no one should do for anything other than entertainment and be prepared to lose however much money they're comfortable losing. Obviously, gambling is a problem for some people, and they shouldn't do it. But like my grandparents gambled responsibly for entertainment, like the entire time I was growing up, and they got a lot of joy out of it. And occasionally they would win something. They never lost more money than they could afford to lose, and it gave them great joy. But the different games are different, right? So some games are actually just pure chance, and some games have odds that you can calculate, and if you're smart, if you're really smart, then you can work them in your favor. They're not all games are created equal. There are people that are actually, poker. There are people who are actually good at poker,
right?
And will consistently win at poker because they understand the game. So they're not really. Are they really gambling?
Yeah, or I don't know. No, but yeah, I mean no. Like.
I mean, I'm something of a sharp myself when it comes to sports gambling. When I lived in Nevada, that's like I supplemented my income quite significantly.
Wow. I used to bet on Counter-Strike games, like video games, like pro games. Yeah. But I don't know. Something about like the idea of randomness kind of weirds me out. Like I think randomness perhaps only exists insofar as we believe it. So like. Something with like rolling dice or something, like wasn't there?
Well, that's the pattern of gambling, though. Is that actually? Well, that's the thing about gambling, right? Is you're actually trying to predict the pattern in the randomness.
Yeah,
because that's how you win.
No, I don't know. It's interesting. I'm not. I played a couple of hands. I'm not like anti gambling is evil, but
right.
Yeah.
It depends, right? Because as you say, like if it is truly random, if it's just like, okay, I'm just gonna try my luck without any sort of strategy behind it, then it does seem.
I mean, roulette is for crazy people, as far as I'm concerned. I would never play roulette, but hey, you know what I mean.
Right. Fair enough. Makes a lot of sense. Nate, I'm not sure. Maybe you already talked about it this week, so feel free to not respond. But I was curious. Can you say a little bit more about how the Symbolic World Summit was? Like, what your experience was?
Wow, it was great. I was the thing. I'll say this. It's like
I'm actually gonna head out, but it's a pleasure talking with you. Nice to meet you both, and hopefully we'll talk again.
Nice to meet you, Jonathan.
Yeah, I Jonathan Pajot really. I was really impressed by like the warmth and magnanimity of Jonathan Pajot as a person. Like during the
really?
I admitted to him when, like later, when I came up for my photo opportunity with him, I told him, it's like, well, I'll be honest with you, I bought my ticket because you got Martin Shaw.
That's great.
But I said, by the end of the conference, I was very moved by what you had to say, and so I'm really glad I came. And like his reaction was just like, to talk about how amazing Martin is, because that's the thing about Jonathan is a very generous spirit. Like he is like. He's an amazing person. He really is. I was like, I was never really sure like how Grill Country was viewed in that corner of the corner, but I was actually like, I was pleasantly surprised by the warmth of the reception, both by people there and by Jonathan himself. When I first came in, like he was like making his way through a crowd, and when he got up to me. It's like, I went in like thinking that we would shake hands, but he gave me a hug and was like, I didn't know. He was like, obviously actually excited to see me. He said, I didn't know you were coming. And that made me feel like really good, like right off the bat. So it kind of set the tone. It's like, oh, okay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So the symbolic world folks are actually happy to see me, or at least Jonathan is.
Yeah, that's wild.
And
Yeah,
then later
that's
throughout the
funny.
weekend, it turned, I discovered I like similarly had really great the conversation, like as always with these things, and it's like they didn't build it into the conference like the Chino conference did, where we had the estuary conversations, but the conversations with people like in between and
We're better.
afterwards were the best part. I mean, I had people over for lunch one day. I stayed behind from the morning session, so I missed the whole Peterson, Stephen DeYoung thing because I was busy cooking.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
So,
That's
yeah.
good. That's clear. And I can also
No,
I think with Jonathan, it's like if he gets criticized or something like that, then you can sort of see that he has this maybe I'm not sure if ego responds to the right thing, but he'll definitely like his generosity is not showing through as much. But when he's just genuinely excited about or passionate about something, he's only positive, right?
And then I was very surprised, like at the very end of the conference, Jonathan was like naming people that have been like friendly or helpful to the work of the symbolic world, and having them stand up.
Yeah.
And I was completely shocked when my name was on the list.
No way.
People that he had stand up.
Yeah.
And he referred to me as a great conversationalist, so which I think is
that's good.
Given what I say about conversation, I'll take that as high as a high compliment.
Yeah. So you don't feel like you were kind of an outsider at the conference?
No, I didn't feel like an outsider. I mean, like I think like the closest, it's funny. The closest I ever came to feeling like an outsider at the conference was like when I took my priest with me to the conference, and when we sat down for the super dinner, like the guy that was sitting across from us, it's like he didn't see my priest's collar at first. So when he found out, he heard that we were Anglican, so he was like kind of like, oh, so you're like fake Orthodox or something like that. Basically, it was like kind of like aggressive at first, but you know what? With I really got to like that guy like by the end of the dinner, and he liked us. But it's like he was like he asked about my channel. Like the last time I ran into him toward the end of the conference, he asked about my channel because he was trying to find it on YouTube, and
right.
So yeah, it's great. In fact, I made a joke to my priest that when we were at the super dinner, I said the drunk Orthodox sound like sober grill country. So once you get enough drinks in the Orthodox, and they start pushing to the fringes of their own theology because the wine is flowing, and they're letting themselves flow. Then they kind of land. They kind of land where I am but that's where my baseline is.
That's wild. That's wild.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, no, I'm happy to hear that. I was kind of afraid that it would be kind of this more fringe thing in this little corner, and it would kind of, there would be reason to.
I think I still feel like the symbolic world is very much. After the conference, I kind of thought Pajot, because of his increase in status, was maybe becoming disconnected from this little corner. But Paul Vanderklay was also one of the people that he called out, even though he wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I think that there's very much like, and you can see the way Jonathan still, like, despite his like increase in status, he still talks to randos. Even Paul. He doesn't do it as often as Paul does, but he goes on, like, effectively talks to randos, because he still goes on very small, insignificant channels.
Yeah.
And we'll talk to them. And
in
fact, I did kind of like get a verbal agreement that he would come on and we would talk about. I have a slightly different take on the Ouroboros and the spiral, because I think they're separate. They're separate images, rather than the same image. I think Tomberg is right about that. I get that from Tomberg, and so he agreed to come on and talk about it. So but we haven't set it up yet. So that'll be at some point in the future.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Interesting. Cool. Okay. No, thank you.
All right, good to see you, Aaron. I'm gonna get out. We'll be back in about an hour and a half.
Okay, sounds good. Enjoy it. Have a nice day, man.
Yeah, bye.
Yes. Okay. Bye.